Superstorm. Is there some companies that are raising estimates that do not reflect reality? How can we as homeowners help in this regard?
The first thing is folks they have to use common sense. That's the first line of defense. The second thing is if people are aware of companies abusing, reach out to the elected officials, reach out to New York One, reach out to the Staten Island events, get us names, get us license plates, and we will work with the various agencies to see who's licensed and who's not. Next week in the council, we will be passing a piece of legislation born out of, forgive me for saying it again, born out of the trip to New Orleans, Councilmember Ignizio, where we're trying to prevent those types of abuses, specifically in the realm of elevating homes. One of the things that was drilled in us in the 48 hours down south was when the maps are finalized and people were told you have to elevate. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry came out and elevated homes. Some did them tragically, some did them badly, some took the money and ran. And this bill essentially is designed to give DOB a 48-hour window period to know what's happening, to make sure there's a DOB inspector in place, and to be able to ensure as best as we can that the people elevating homes know how to elevate homes.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. So I'm going to kind of merge a couple of questions because there's lots of questions that deal with buyouts. And I think that each buyout situation tends to be somewhat unique in its own realm, but there's a couple of that as they come together, seem that they may coalesce, and we might be able to cover more of them this way. So some of the issues that are coming out with respect to buyouts are dealing with things like, what if I want to be bought out and I'm a semi-detached and my neighbor doesn't? How do we handle things like that? Another key thing about the buyout deals with equity issues. You know, is there a strategy for helping to balance the way that the buyouts are accomplished based on not being prejudicial against socioeconomic abilities? So it's really about how are things being done in terms of buyouts that will help make things fair and equitable.
I guess I'm just going to break it down how it's supposed to work anyway from what we know. And I've been speaking to some of my colleagues from the Catskills region who went through this process last year. So there's a pot of money that's been allocated. I believe that the amount right now is $400 million. And out of that money, it would be, it's supposed to be fair market value, pre-storm fair market value. If you relocate to the same county, it would be a 5% bonus on top of that. And if your whole block sells out, then it would be a 10% bonus on top of that. So that's the way it's supposed to break down. So you bring up an interesting point, which we've all discussed locally. What do we do in situations with you have a semi-attached home? I think it would be probably similar. And you know, it's similar to the issue that we're facing right now with mold, where you have a house that's attached, and it's owned by a bank, or the owner just abandoned it, and now that's creating a mold situation for the person next door. And so these are all like types of things that we've been discussing among ourselves on how we're going to tackle these problems as they rise.
There's another question that deals with, as Assemblywoman Malliotakis was referring to a group of people who are in a house where they will need to elevate it. So it reads as this: is it possible for a semi-attached home or group of condos to be elevated approximately 5 foot to the mandatory heights, and how expensive would it be?
We are getting in the deeper end of the pool where I don't have expertise other than what I've, through osmosis over the last few months. At one point, we were told that the going rate was $10,000 per foot that you elevate, but I think we've heard estimates that were much lower than that. I was told recently, I was told that you, just last night, from a national contractor, basically said you can elevate it, but should you? Do you want to? Will it be a good thing? And apparently with attached housing, what they do is, in some instances, they blow out the roof and actually elevate the floor, so you give up that bottom area. But I am not an expert by any means. It's something probably that, Bob England, who's the borough president's land use guy, would be able to answer in more detail. But it's a huge challenge. Attached housing is a huge challenge. As Nicole said, you have one house, one side of the attached housing, who's doing everything they can to reclaim their lives. The other side is foreclosed, the person abandoned it, they haven't been in to take out the furniture. I've seen firewalls that were compromised and told that sheetrock was just put up in between it, which is scary on many levels. Attached housing is a huge challenge, and frankly, none of us yet in elective office have gotten the answers that we're seeking.
So this is where I was mentioning earlier that we get frustrated because we don't have the answers. And it's my understanding that if you have flood insurance and you call your flood insurer, and ask them about the flood elevation program, it's supposed to be a grant that's funded by the federal government. It would be a $30,000 grant to help you with your elevation, and that's what we're fighting for on the state level, is to add to that pot to make sure there is a mitigation program for those people who do want to stay in their homes to help them fund that. And so I think that's the governor did say during his State of the State and the budget that in addition to the buyout program, there would be another program to rebuild smarter and safer and provide grants for those who are going to stay and need to rebuild at a higher.
May I just add a couple other thoughts on elevations? The final maps are not set. Okay, they won't be set for a couple of years. And historically, they get a little bit better in terms of how high you have to elevate. There's one person apparently on Staten Island who elevated his home and subsequently found out he didn't elevate high enough. The borough president announced in the state of the borough that he's creating a website where it's like one-stop shop, where you put in your address and you will get that final number.
I'd like to end with a question, which I'd like to ask each of the panelists to answer in respective areas, because I think that there's a really good spectrum. Given the complexities of future planning, is there any working timeline for the implementation of programs, projects, and procedures? So on the city, on the state, and on the federal level, can you share with us any of the timelines that you see?
Well, I think the CDGB money dictates the timeline, and if Seth were here, Seth would tell you that his longer-term goal is coming out in May. We have to tap into that federal money by a date certain, or we lose it, so that plan, that vision that we were discussing earlier, has to happen in, let's say, the spring, later in the spring, by May. And I think the intent of the Bloomberg administration is to really have as much of this underway as their tenure wraps up at City Hall. But I think May is going to be an interesting month in terms of their Seth's longer-term sustainability plan is released. I think the plan to tap into the CDGB money for the residential side gets articulated publicly probably in May. But the overall recovery, you measure in years.
For the state level, I think that the public can expect probably in about a month or so, probably April, I would say, a rollout of what programs will be offered and what the state intends to do with the funds received from the federal government. We will be passing our budget within the next couple of weeks. After that, I think we'll get a good idea of what people can start applying for, what their options are. In addition to that, I would say I agree with Jimmy on the long-term stuff, because rebuilding itself, years, because even, when I talk to my friends in the Catskills who experienced this with Hurricane Irene, they have people that are still waiting on the buyout. They're still waiting to actually get the paper, get the funds, and to move on. So that's over a year ago. So you would say probably a couple of months to learn what program's going to be available, a couple of years to finally get everything, your lives back in order.
And first off, thanks for having me on the panel, inviting us to the panel. The thing for the federal government side is, as it comes to long-term recovery, as it comes to the community's plan, the city's plan, and the state's plan, is to make sure that when it's time to be executed, whether it be a FEMA program or other federal programs, we're ready to execute it. So you're not waiting for any red tape for the federal government. So if it's there for resources, if it's there for funding, you have to make sure the funding is there. If it's there for execution of any federal laws on our side, we're leaning forward to make sure that we know your plan and we know what we need to do to execute it.
If you wanted guidance, look at Santa Cruz, California, who had an earthquake. It was 93, I don't remember which one it was, but probably 2 to 3 years still starts to look better, and probably 5 years before you see it back to where you would all be satisfied.
Can you all join me in thanking our